The original New Balance Supercomp trainer was one of the first shoes to take a super trainer and make it a little bit more max cushion. But does the V3 really take the same general approach? Let's break it down. Meet the New Balance SC Trainer V3. What's up everyone, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Now today we're going to be talking about the New Balance SC Trainer, and if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you're going to notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around throughout the review to the various parts that you're most interested in, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full video when you do get a second. On top of that, if you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment. Let me know what I could be doing better in these reviews to constantly improve them for each and every one of you. Before we dive into any specifics, I do want to give some disclaimers and disclosures, which are that I was provided this shoe for free for the purpose of review directly from New Balance. That being said, they don't require that I make any specific type of content. They don't give me talking points. They don't watch my videos beforehand. No one does. In fact, all thoughts are entirely my own. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of the shoe. The SC Trainer is going to be a super trainer, specifically a max cushion super trainer, which is made to be the marathon training companion of the New Balance SC Elite. Essentially, if the SC Elite is going to be your race day shoe, this is the shoe that you're going to be doing the bulk of your training miles in, your marathon long runs, things along those lines. As such, that's how we're going to be evaluating the shoe throughout the review. Now from a price point, the shoe comes in at $180, which is fairly typical for this type of shoe. Most like marathon training companions are falling within the range of around $170 up to about $200 depending on the brand. So 180 is kind of right there in the middle. It is a reasonable overall price point at this point in time, but running shoes are getting a little bit unreasonable in price overall, let's be honest. From a specs perspective, the shoe comes in at 9.8 ounces, which is 278 grams. And this is honestly a little bit on the heavier overall side for a plated trainer, in my opinion. That being said, it is still kind of lighter when you're looking at more of those max cushion plated trainers. And so I'm not gonna hold the weight really against it, especially because its predecessor, at least the one, the Outsole Supercomp trainer, this came in at around 11 ounces, and that is 312 grams. So there's been a significant weight loss throughout the generations of this shoe, which I sure appreciate. From a stack perspective, you've got 41 in the heel and 35 in the forefoot for a 6mm heel to toe drop, which is right in that same range and setup as the New Balance Rebel V4 as well as the Supercomp Elite V4. So very similar setup, drop, kind of feel, look, geometry, all of that for the entire Outsole line, and that was very intentional by New Balance. Moving on to the fit of the shoe, this shoe fits very similar overall to the Rebel V4 as well as the SC Elite. So if you've tried those two shoes, I would go with your same general size. But both of those shoes were a little bit short in terms of length. Not so short though, where I felt like it really made sense to half size down. So I would go with your normal size for the most part, but it is a little bit short, and then it is fairly accommodating throughout. I think it's most notably standard kind of fit in the midfoot, but I found that the toe box and the heel fit a little bit wider, a little bit loose, not so much again that you need to mess with your normal sizing. And it's actually, I should say, a little bit more streamlined than the Rebel, where I unfortunately, as much as I love the Rebel, I did feel like the fit was a little bit sloppy. Now moving to the upper, you have an engineered mesh as well as a phantom fit kind of lockdown lacing system. Despite being a little bit wide, I did find that the upper was very, very comfortable. There is a little bit of strategic cushioning there in the heel, and then the tongue is just a little bit longer and a little bit heavier weight than the Rebel. I'll actually do a full comparison between those two shoes as a breakdown, so stay tuned for that. That'll probably release a couple of days after this video, but something that's notable is that, yeah, the tongue is not just kind of a piece of like foam or mesh, it's a little bit more structured. Along with that, it is fully gusseted, which helps it keep itself in place and helps the lockdown of the shoe overall. So while in other models of the Outsole line, I did feel like I was slipping around just a little bit, I actually felt like this had the best overall lockdown of the three shoes, being the Rebel, SC Trainer, and SC Elite. The upper itself, that engineered mesh is kind of like a dual layer mesh, and it is very, very breathable, and it feels very lightweight, despite the shoe being on the slightly heavier side. Something to note though is that on the outer ankle bone, right, kind of around here, I felt like that was rubbing my ankle bone a little bit. It's not super hard kind of to the touch when you're playing with it here, but for some reason it did poke and just kind of press in and apply a little bit of pressure to my ankle when I got my run started. I don't know if anyone had any additional issues with that. It didn't cause any blistering or chafing or anything like that, and as soon as I kind of got going, I didn't really notice it anymore, but it is something I wanted to bring up just in case you've had issues with shoes and kind of just that ankle collar in the past. Moving to the midsole, you have a fuel cell midsole, which is a PIBA EVA blend, and then sandwiched within this midsole, you actually have a carbon fiber plate. They call it the Energy Arc, and it is a forked carbon fiber plate, so it actually splits, which allows for better kind of heel to toe transition or better toe off in general. Now, I absolutely love the EVA PIBA blends that New Balance uses in their fuel cell foam. I'm not 100% sure if it is the same blend that was used in the Rebel, because the Rebel does have a EVA PIBA blend, or if it is more PIBA and closer to the fuel cell foam that is used in the Elite, which is a full PIBA outsole or midsole. Overall though, the sensation underfoot of this shoe is really, really nice. A lot of the times when you get kind of a 40+ millimeter stack in the heel plus a carbon fiber plate, the shoe ends up being very, very stiff, and I did not feel like that was the case with this shoe. This is actually one of the squishier, softer overall foams when it comes to super trainers out there, especially with, again, carbon fiber plates. And because it has that PIBA blend within it and that carbon fiber plate, I found that despite being soft and squishing and compressing underfoot quite a bit, the shoe did have some decent pickup. Now, the shoe is advertised again as the marathon training companion, so if you think about traditional marathon training, you rarely really go faster than like maybe tempo pace once you're deep within a marathon training block. You know, you're doing a lot of tempo pace, you're doing a lot of threshold pace, you're doing a lot of marathon pace, but you're not really going towards like the 5K and the 1 mile paces, maybe just to keep those fresh throughout the training block. And so for the most part, I do feel like this shoe checks the boxes of marathon training companion, because from like the tempo plus paces, this shoe feels very, very comfortable, very, very smooth. It is one of the more responsive shoes out there too, with the max cushion. So it is one of the unique few at that max cushion height that I do feel like can perform decently at the shorter, faster intervals, or things like 5K pace and even mile pace. But I don't think that that is its ideal place, if that makes sense. So I do think it gains some points for having extra versatility, being able to go faster than a lot of the higher stack plated shoes, but its sweet spot is still going to be the same as the majority of them, and it still does what it is advertised to do, which is handle the bulk marathon training miles. Now, the shoe is soft and stable enough that you could even go easy. It can handle really easy paces as well, but I never recommend using a plated shoe for daily use, as it does alter your mechanics, it does alter your stride, and if overused can lead to injury. Just talking about past iterations or past models, I feel like the V3 is really more versatile and a better overall shoe than the original V1. I loved every mile in the V1. I felt like the shoe was super smooth, super comfortable, so bouncy. It was revolutionary when it was released, but its downfall was it was incredibly heavy. And so you really just on longer runs, especially like marathon training runs, would fatigue if you were wearing this shoe. So I feel like the V3 really found the balance of having that cushion underfoot, having that stack, still being responsive, and being light enough that you can handle long runs in it, and it's responsive enough that it doesn't really weigh you down over the course of even like a 13+ mile run. So while I don't love everything about this shoe more than I loved in the V1, I do think it is a big upgrade overall on that initial first iteration. Full disclosure, I didn't run in the V2, so I don't know how this stacks up to the V2. I know that there were a lot of people who weren't fans of the V2 if they liked the V1. There were people who didn't like the V1 but loved the V2. So I do feel like the V3 though is doing more of what it is set out to do, and I do think this was a very well executed shoe for that purpose. Now, moving to the outsole, you have that same traction pattern that you're going to find similar on the Rebel as well as the SC Elite. It's just a durable rubber. You have kind of cutouts, you can see that texture, which is also going to save some weight, and it is just generally strategically placed in order to gives some weight savings. Now this rubber is a little bit more rigid than a lot of the rubbers you'll find on super trainers and racing shoes, and that is actually intentional. One, to give good traction. I found that the traction was good, maybe not the best in the world, but it was good. It got the job done. But because of the rigidity of the traction, it allows for the foam to be a little bit softer because it gives a little bit more structure to the shoe as well. The downfall of that is it also gives some weight, but again, despite being a little bit heavier than maybe some of its competitors, I felt like the shoe was well executed, and really the weight wasn't an overall concern for me when I had it on foot. The foam is soft enough though that if it didn't have that more rigid traction, or not traction, but more rigid rubber underfoot, I could see where this shoe could end up being overly squishy or overly soft when trying to go fast and become really, really unstable. So it was very intentional what New Balance did, I think, with that rubber. As far as durability of the rubber, I've got about 40-ish miles on the shoes, and I'm not seeing any major wears throughout the outsole here. It seems to be holding up well for the most part. And I'm not seeing any real wear in the midsole foam either on those areas that are exposed. So obviously they do extensive testing with both professional runners, as well as most brands will do like wear testing with runners who are at least doing bulk miles, so that they can look at wear patterns, and it looks like they got the traction pattern right for the most part. Now, as far as who's this shoe for, I mean, I think the obvious answer is if you really like the Rebel, you really like the SC Elite, and you want a shoe that you can do a lot of your bulk miles in without putting extra miles on your race day shoes, this is going to be an excellent option for you. If you're someone who is honestly maybe on the 4-hour plus range for marathons, and you don't want to splurge on super shoes, and you want something that's going to be a little bit more affordable that you can still race in, but you can do a lot of really bulk miles in, I think that this would be an excellent racing option for a lot of people, right? It's very comfortable. It's stable for the most part on foot. You know, it's just a really balanced shoe overall, a really good structured shoe. And so I think a lot of people would really enjoy this shoe for the marathon distance or the half marathon distance, depending on what your goals are. So I think it's a great race day option. The other type of person who might really like this shoe are those who are looking for a shoe that they could use for almost any type of workout, right? They're trying to keep their rotation tight, and they need a shoe that, like, they just want two shoes. They want a daily mile or easy day shoe, and then they want a shoe that they could hit, you know, short intervals in, tempo work in, threshold work in, long runs in. This shoe is probably going to handle that variety of workouts better than almost any shoe on the market. The only other shoe I think that could maybe, well, there's two that I feel like could also fit in that category, which would probably be like the Asics Magic Speed 4 as well as the Asics Super Blast 2. Super Blast 2 is probably not going to be your shoe though for shorter stuff. So as far as like plated trainers, this as well as the Magic Speed, just depending on your preference of foam, as that's very firm, this is very soft. So a couple of, you know, just thoughts there as far as who could benefit from the shoe. Just to reiterate, it's not a daily use shoe, right? This is not a daily trainer. This is a plated trainer meant for speed workouts, meant for marathon training. And so although it may feel really nice on foot, you may feel very efficient, overusing a plate like this could cause some damage, so just be aware of that. So just some final thoughts on the shoe. This was my Max Cushion plated trainer of 2024. It's a very well executed shoe. Despite being a little bit heavy, you don't really notice the weight because the shoe is soft, it is responsive, it is stable. You don't really fatigue in the shoe, and you have the ability to take it fast if you want to, even though it's not going to shine there probably at most, but it shines really, really well on those long runs, those marathon pace runs, those threshold, those tempo runs. So overall, I think that this was a big winner from New Balance. As far as some changes that I would like to see, and I know that they are working on this in 2025 with some of the updates to their models, the uppers should be a little bit more streamlined, should be fit a little bit better. And then there's just that issue with the ankle collar, which didn't cause a lot of frustration or anything with me, but if it is rubbing, I would assume that there are people that is maybe causing issues for overall, especially on those longer runs. So I would like to see just maybe a little bit more of a streamlined upper, but for the most part, I think that the SC Trainer V3 was a winner in my books. Now, if you watched this far, I sure appreciate you. Please hit that subscribe button, give me a like, leave a comment, let me know what else you're curious about when it comes to the SC Trainer V3. V3. And if you're already subscribed, make sure you hit that notification bell just so it lets you know anytime I release some new content, a new video. And as always, I'll leave you with a question, which is your favorite iteration of the SC trainer line? Was it the V1, the V2, or the current V3? Let me know down below. Thanks, everybody.